Hello and welcome to 67 Hail Hail. I am your host, John. It's nice to be back on the channel. I go away for a couple of months, Stevie, take a wee break, step back from the YouTube, come back, Ange Postecoglou's gone and Brendan Rodgers is on the brink of being appointed. Time moves quickly in football.
I was just about to say, see, up until Hamish got that photo with Ange, I think he was absolutely fine. Everything was okay with him. Then he
I'm just
goes
glad
and
I never
rushes and
wrote a
gets a
book about him,
photo.
Stevie.
I know, what's that mug would do that?
And
That mug is on holiday again. Can you believe it, John?
I think he's on holiday with Eddie Howe actually, I believe. So anyway, today isn't about Ange. Myself and Steve have not been on the channel since Ange popped off the Tottenham Hotspur. I think we both do have thoughts about how all that went down, but we'll probably cover that over the summer in some other capacity. Today, everyone for the last week has just been so focused on the future of Celtic and who the new manager is going to be. And boy, has there been a list, Stevie. There's been a long list. Just before we get started and dig into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to read you off the list of every name that has been linked with Celtic over the last week in the papers and in various social media rumours and WhatsApp messages. So this is the full list. As far as I'm aware, there could be one or two that I've missed. But it reads Pascal Jensen, Anthony Areola, Brendan Rodgers, Jesse Marsh, Kjetil Knutsen, Enzo Maresca, Rick DeMille, Kieran McKenna, Francesco Farioli, Daniel Flack, David Moyes. That's quite a list, Stevie. Have you been keeping up with every minute, every breaking update on all this?
No, I haven't. It's got to the point that I've actually, you know, I remember this is so different to something I actually said the other day in work. This is dead like the Howe fiasco, and I went, no, it's not because there was
No.
football to distract us for the Howe fiasco. While Celtic were garbage, that can't be denied in that Howe fiasco. Like at the same time, we were able to distract from the manager nonsense by watching just how terrible we were in the pitch. And I know that sounds mad, but I was fine with it because essentially, that was the main distraction from that boring topic. Now that Ange's left, and I've got to give him his due some time in there, John. I really just wanted, selfishly speaking here, a very quiet, easy summer. We talking about Celtic maybe at the end of July or the start of August again, and thanks to Ange, that's not possible. But no, I haven't really kept up to date. I've kept up to date with as much as possible. But even when you've been rhyming off a couple of names there, I've just been so zoned out by it. I think what happens is usually people spout it. The papers will generally just make stuff up as well, John.
Mm-hmm.
That is just what they do now. They're unchallenged and they're allowed to get away with murder in that respect. And it's just got to the point now that I don't think, last week, I think with the list that I saw, it was just got to the point it was spiraling out of control. A complete nonsense. And I just want this week for it all to be formalised now. I want it to be official. I think it is looking increasingly like Brendan Rodgers going by the last couple of days, especially with the report last night. And I've got to say, John, while it's not my first choice, I just want it over and done with now. And I just want to start looking forward and stop talking about Ange, to be honest with you.
So the reason I listed off all those names was just to illustrate the kind of the wide field that Celtic have supposedly been considering over the last 7 days. As you say, and as the title of this video suggests, the current situation is that it does look like Brendan Rodgers. Now, the reports indicate that Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay, the chief executive and the finance director at Celtic, flew to Spain to talk to Brendan Rodgers face to face on Saturday. Um, you know, there's a lot of names in the mix. Some people will make more of that meeting than other people. Your mileage will vary on what it all means, but at this point, it's all swinging towards one direction for me. And like you, I think it would be better if it's all wrapped up quite quickly. As I say, it's nothing like the Eddie Howe situation. First of all, as you say, because there was loads of football to distract us, but also because of the length of time that it took. In fairness to Celtic, this time it looks like they're going to appoint a manager fairly quickly. Now, there's anything can happen in football. We all know that. Brendan Rodgers might end up not fancying it. Celtic might commit to another person. But if you're reading the tea leaves at the moment, it does look like Rodgers. And a lot of people are going to have a lot of different feelings about that. Let's be honest about it. I mean, there's an element of the support won't be happy with it. I think a lot of the support will be happy with it. And there's a lot to kind of unpack here because there's so much baggage with Rodgers in terms of the history. He's good and bad baggage, in terms of the history he's had at Celtic. He obviously brought us great success, Stevie. Then he left under a cloud and kind of left Celtic fans angry, shall we say, with all sorts of nicknames directed in his direction. Now he's coming back with the goal of winning. Really, what's your gut feeling on it? And how would you feel about him taking charge of this team going into next season?
Gut feeling is that out of all the candidates, I don't think he is the best man for the job. I mean, obviously, I think Graham Potter was my number one choice. That was who I wanted us to go all in, no pun intended, on. I don't think Graham Potter was going to fancy it up here. So when you take him out the list, you look at them all, and I do think after that Brendan Rodgers is probably the best candidate for it after him. And in any job, John, you go for the person who is the best and the person that you think would do the best job. And I honestly feel that Brendan Rodgers would. Now, you've known me for a long time, like Hamish. You know exactly how I feel about Brendan Rodgers. So what I have learned to do now, after Ange, is basically take away. It's a bit sad, really, because, part of being a football fan is getting emotionally wrapped up and emotionally invested in the manager, the team, the club itself. That is what Celtic are all about. They play and they feed off emotions, and that's what me and you, countless other fans, are very good at. We just wrap ourselves right into it. We go in head first. And after Ange, I just feel like, there's just the element of that emotion getting wrapped up in it. I just feel as if that's all been lost now, because when it comes to Rodgers, I'm going to treat it very much like an employee, shall we say.
A business relationship.
A business relationship, John, and that might very well it could be a good thing, though. It could make us more ruthless as a club, could make us more ruthless as a fan base. Brendan Rodgers is going to have to work very hard in order to gain our trust as that. Because I'm saying that now, right? But John, and I know that so many people, as soon as he walks through the door and spouts anything, he's going to get lauded by, I would say, the vast majority of the support. I think a minority will be very sceptical about him. But taking away for that side of things, my gut feeling does tell me that regardless of my personal sort of feelings about him, regardless of how he left, massive question marks over his recruitment in the past for Celtic and his recruitment for Leicester as well. That's a massive problem for me. How false he'll possibly be at press conferences, because let's be honest, you're not going to get points at press conferences, are you? When it comes to dealing with a squad like that, and when it comes to his past achievements, I do feel Brendan Rodgers is, out of the list, after you take away Graham Potter, the best man for the job in that respect. That is my shoot opinion on it.
I think what we can say is that, football is fickle and football fans are fickle. I don't think there'll be too much grumbling about Brendan Rodgers if he starts the season well and goes on a winning run. Let's put it that way. But I don't think anyone's going to get carried away either. And as he just alluded to there, I think that could be a good thing for everyone, because everyone would go into this with their eyes open, I think. We know what Brendan Rodgers is all about. We know his good points, we know his bad points. Brendan Rodgers knows what Celtic is all about, what the Celtic support are all about. I think he would be far more careful with the Celtic support this time around in terms of the language and some of the patter that he comes out with, and that's fine. But we maybe don't need a manager to hold our hand and taking us on a inspiring journey from behind the eight ball to, all conquering champions. We just want to be winners at the end of the day. Ange was the perfect manager for the perfect moment. We were all at a low ebb. We were completely rudderless. We had no leadership. Ange came in and brought the support together with the club again. I genuinely believe that, no matter how it's turned out and what's happened, he did what he needed to do to bring fans together with the club. And now we're in a position of great strength. And I think bringing in a manager who knows how to win in Scotland first and foremost, who I think will get a tune out of most of these players that are currently in the squad, I think it does make sense from a lot of perspectives. Obviously, from the emotional perspective, it doesn't make much sense. And that's fine. As we know, emotions increasingly sidestepped in football. And I've spoken a lot about, because football is quite emotional for me. Everyone's emotional about different aspects of football, whether it's family, friends, whatever. But I think when Celtic are looking at it from a purely business decision, from a purely footballing perspective, I think bringing in Rodgers would make some amount of sense. And that's where I kind of land on it as well. I don't need to be best friends with the Celtic manager. That's just not. I don't need that. You know, it's nice to have a kind of two-way relationship, a mutual love, but ultimately it's about winning, and Celtic fans will forgive a lot if we're winning, and we've seen that down the years with many managers. So it's all kind of it would be an interesting realliance, an interesting coming together, because I think a lot of people are parking a lot of stuff. But I can't deny that it does make some amount of sense from my perspective too. So, I'm glad we're on the same wavelength as that. Just going back to something you touched on there, Stevie, the recruitment is an issue, isn't it? Because
Yes.
I think one of the things that, the club and Rodgers will need to come to terms with when they're going through this process, if he does become manager, is there needs to be a reevaluation of that relationship, that prior relationship that was there. Because don't forget, Rodgers had his own almost hand-picked recruitment guy overseeing things, and Lee Conger in. Presumably we're not going to see one of his pals turn up in 3 months and Mark Lawwell would be in situ, in his current role. Rodgers needs to give some back of the kind of power that he had in the first place. And likewise, the club needs to assert itself and say to Rodgers, we've got a recruitment model. This is what we want to do going forward. You're in here to manage the club. Yes, you will have a say on signings. Yes, you will sign off on signings. But it has to be done on our terms. And that'll be probably one of the things that they're talking about this week.
Yeah, I think it's a hard act to follow as well when you look at Ange Postecoglou's recruitment, John. I mean, it's like 90% hit rate. I mean, that first season, the players that he brought in with CCV, Juranovic, Jota, honestly, even in the winter transfer window, the success rate that he had was frightening. If I look at, Brendan Rodgers, I would arguably say, right, that he made 21 signings at Celtic. There's a handful that you could say that he got right. That was Edward, Ayer, Sinclair, Dembele, and Cham as well. Now, the rest of the players that he signed, when you look through the list of them, they were average to garbage. And I think under Ange, our expectation levels have went up as well when it comes to recruitment. I remember, in the past, you'd always accept that there might be 1 in 3 of the signings that you get in could be a dud or whatever. But I think Ange has blown that. Ange, and obviously the behind the scenes with Mark Lawwell and that as well, they've blown it out of the water. See if you actually scout and you're competent behind the scenes and you've got a good working relationship and you identify the right players and you think, are they going to fit in to this culture, to our system in this country? There's no reason to just accept you're going to get a dud signing along the way. And that is going to be the major one for me, because in his second and third season, Brendan's signings were atrocious, and we ended up just being in a position, John, where we were just sort of buying in loan players just for the sake of it. We didn't really need, but it was just an excuse to say, we're doing something about it to bolster the squad. But they're terrible. Your guys like Toljan and Ollie Buck and all that. It was just a mess by the end, we were going to be in the exact same position like a season later. Ange's transfers and his policy it was very much future as well. It wasn't just like a stopgap sign for the season. He was looking down the line too. And I think the club and Rodgers have to sit down and they basically have to say, when it comes to recruitment going forward with Celtic after Ange here, it has to be a similar signing model. I don't expect the football to be the same as what we were playing under Ange. I think it's going to be a different system. We've accepted that, but the signings have to make sense and they can't go back to that ridiculous loan model that they were doing before.
I mean, Rodgers carries the can for a lot of that, and I do understand that to an extent, but I think if you remember back, a lot of those signings came as a result of just a disconnect between the club and Rodgers itself. It seemed like Rodgers wanted to pursue players that the club weren't happy with pursuing. And then we had to settle for other signers later in the window. I think good examples of that are Malumbu and Toljan and that particular transfer window. Rodgers might have wanted to bring in other people earlier in that year. I think obviously the club and Rodgers would need to draw a line under all that, first of all, and figure out a way forward that best suits Celtic, because I think at the time, that final summer transfer window, it did feel like there was that disconnect between the board and Rodgers was harming Celtic, and that's what we don't want. We don't want to get into that situation where the board and Rodgers aren't really seeing eye to eye, and it's actually actively harming the way we go about our business. That's the last thing anyone wants. And if Rodgers is coming back in and it gets to that point again, then no one's going to be very happy with that, least of all the fans. So there needs to be a line drawn under that. It needs to be a fruitful relationship. And hopefully now the position of strength we're in, I mean, we've got a lot of money in terms of a transfer budget. Rodgers doesn't have to be dealing with these European qualifiers anymore. You know, if we win the league next season, we'll be automatically in the Champions League again, for instance. No qualifiers this summer. I know that he didn't like that during his first time around because it felt like he was putting all his eggs in one basket and he didn't know what we were doing for the summer because we couldn't really spend money until later in the window until we knew whether we were in the Champions League or not. So that's another element of all that. But it's one of those things that you hope common sense prevails, and they are doing this for the good of making Celtic a winning machine again, ultimately. And we know that Rodgers can give us the foundations to do that because he did it so successfully when he was here last time. 7 out of 7 trophies and well on the way to number 8. It was quite an incredible run when you think back to it.
Yeah, it was. The only reservations I'd have about it is, of course, and I've kind of mellowed on that front to an extent as well. When John, you know what's coming, and when I was speaking to you all about that run, that I did feel as if it was a bit of a tap in for us as well. So I'd be very interested to see what it's like now under Rodgers up against a Rangers side who, you know, aren't managed by the likes of Kishinya and Murty and everything in this occasion. But at the same time, when you flip on that and you look at what Rodgers has done down south, you know, against managers like Guardiola and Klopp as well, he's went to like Stamford Bridge and got results. So I don't think for a second he's a mug, but I'd like to see what he's going to be like up against the Rangers side who I think are going to be posing quite a threat next season as well. I don't think any of us can sit and deny that it's going to be as much a tap in this time. But no, ultimately I think the fact that he is a serial winner bolsters his case. But I mean, again, I'm still talking here because he's definitely not my first pick, and I did have major sort of issues with him before, with the amount of garbage and crap that he talked. I'm not going to sit here, John, and just say to you that I was comfortable with a lot of the patter that he hit out with. I wasn't, but at the same time as well, I have to now, as I'm saying to you, put all that emotion and all that sort of stuff aside and just have to now get behind him with it, because that's it. He's likely going to be the manager in the next sort of 48 hours, isn't he?
Well, push Rodgers to the side for just one moment, because I think we do need to just discuss another couple of names who have been more prominent than the other ones. As I said, I read off that big list, but I would suggest that someone like Enzo Maresca is more of a viable candidate than a lot of other people on the list. Kjetil Knutsen of Bodo Glimt is another character that you could see taking the job. And then you've got someone like Daniel Fark, you know, the former Norwich and Gladbach manager. Different kind of profiles there. How would you feel about a Maresca, kind of unknown? And how would you feel about, you know, someone coming from Norway? How would you feel about Daniel Fark, who's probably in a middle ground in that he's won the championship a couple of times with Norwich. He's has experience in the Premier League and Bundesliga. If it's not Rodgers, if the Rodgers things doesn't pan out, who of the people who are left do you feel most comfortable about?
I'd like to see us go with Knutsen out of all the rest of them. Just feel like the type of foot, no, the cliche coming and play the Celtic way and everything. I mean, you look at the way his Bodo side just massacred us. They were absolutely relentless. It was a version of the way that Ange was setting out to play, but you know, they did it far more comfortably and they made it look very easy. And he assembled some cracking players with that Bodo side. So out of the names mentioned, certainly him, he's left the biggest impression because frankly, there's been anytime I've seen Farks with Norwich, it's I think in the Championship when he was there, impressive, but making the step up, he was always sort of like, you know, taking the drop again sort of the season after it, and I just feel that you can't really get away with that at Celtic. It's one of the big things I've got a reservation with is at Celtic, John, you know what it's like, you're just a result away for a disaster. You've got to be winning week after week, and you know what it's like. I mean, Ange managed that very well. He saw in the first 3 out of 6 games the first 6 games where we lost 3 of them, and I think he realised, you know, just how big a deal it was that that can continue, and that's why that win at Aberdeen was just a massive one to sort of get the consistency going after that. I worry about other managers such as Maresca in terms of coming into this environment. And I know what is the unknown as well, because he could come up here as well, John. We're talking it and boss it too. But I do have my doubts, I really do, because I just feel as if I feel this job and the Celtic sort of job would just overwhelm someone like that. I do. Not to sound patronising, the guy's done way more in football than probably any other sort of Scottish manager, and sort of for the likes of myself here, this idiot pundit. You know what I mean? I think the guy's done so much, so I don't want to just sort of disrespect him in that respect. But honestly, I do have my doubts that this job is so bonkers that, and the fan base are just, you know, again, that emotional, that I just feel that if Maresca was to come into this, it would just overwhelm him, and I would like a steady sort of pair of hands on it, just for maybe a season or two.
You know how Stevie feels about someone when he goes to that Maresca. A damning indictment if ever I've heard one, Stevie. In all seriousness, I mean, but you know, with all these names that get linked with the job, some of it I'm not sure how much is Celtic kind of putting the feelers out every couple of years, keeping up with who's who on the European coaching scene, maybe making relationships that pay off down the line. You know, apparently we looked at Postecoglou for a wee while before we actually appointed him, etc., etc. So I mean, I'm not too disheartened. You know, a lot of, when a new name comes up and he's not immediately who we think we should be in the job, a lot of fans are like, "No, get that guy out. He shouldn't be anywhere near it." But you don't know if it's Celtic just speaking to people for speaking's sake, almost. So I guess we'll see how the next couple of days pan out in that regard. You know, as we say, it does seem to be pointing towards Rodgers at the moment, but you know, this time tomorrow it could be pointing towards a totally different person. So anything can happen. Just touching on Celtic's future, regardless of who takes the job, you know, Ange just left. You know, a lot of people would say we're not in a great place right now. I personally don't really agree with that. I feel like we're in one of our strongest positions we've ever been in, you know, regardless of not having a manager. Reasons to be hopeful for next season, regardless of who takes the job, surely.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've seen Celtic managers walk into Barber's positions. Certainly never in a position of strength like this from what I can remember. I mean, all the way for so your guy Martin O'Neill was coming in after Barnes and Dalglish handled the 99-2000 season, and we finished like 21 points behind Rangers, wasn't it? You know, like that, and all the way for when Strachan inherited Martin O'Neill's mess, where just players were on bloated contracts and the hunger for a lot of them was gone. He had a huge job in his hands. I don't buy that at all, because I look at a squad and, you know, you've got a guy like CCV in there, you've got Alistair Johnson, you've got class internationals, you've got Kyogo, you've got the creativity of Hatate there. Timo Kawada is going to be joining us on a permanent transfer too, and then you've got Jota in that team as well. I mean, any manager coming into that should surely be excited with the footballers that he's got to be playing with. I don't know what any manager would come into that and go, what a job I've got here, what a mess I've inherited. Like, this is a squad that, you know, have just won the trebles, and I understand that Ange said that there's going to be a few of them leaving, but we're not in a position where we're going to be short of a few bob as well. So we can certainly invest, John.
Yeah, none of them are on expiring contracts. You know, if someone does want some of these players, they're going to have to pay decent money for them. We do have an exciting squad. I mean, just without selling anyone, we're going to have a significant transfer budget this summer. You know, around £20 million, but by the looks of it, and you know, on the back of record turnover. So I do feel like Celtic are in an incredibly strong position. It's very exciting sometimes when you've been at a low ebb and you're looking for a new manager, and you're kind of looking for a manager to take you on a journey of being at that low ebb to great success. And it's always so exciting, and fans get behind it and they throw everything into it. And that's why managers like Martin O'Neill, like you've just mentioned, were so popular. That's why Ange was so popular. But we don't need that at the moment. We need someone who can come in and kind of kick us on, basically. Hopefully maintain this domestic success. Hopefully kick us on in Europe somehow. You know, even if it's dropping into the Europa League, which is but the changes to the Champions League, this is actually going to be the last season where you can drop into the Europa League from the Champions League. So even if that happens this season, that will be exciting for all concerned. So I think there is so many reasons to be optimistic and hopeful at the moment, and it just depends, on how we gel with the new manager. I think a lot of the candidates are pretty good. I think we can take the club in a few different directions, and I think we're pretty well placed to have another good season next year, despite Ange walking out the door, and that would be my message to people. Really, that's how I've been feeling over the last week. I know it was obviously a little bit of a blow to see Ange walking out the door, but I think he walks out the door with Celtic in a position of rude health, and I think we should all recognise that going forward. Anything else you kind of want to cover or speak about or get off your chest now you've got this platform, Stevie?
Just at the end there, where you're saying we were moving forward, I want to see Celtic more ruthless. I mean, Ange was ruthless with certain players. He was certainly ruthless with us as fans, the way that he left as well. He didn't have any doubts in his mind whatsoever. So I want to see us being ruthless in that respect in future as well. I really do. And whether that is, with the current squad that we've got, I know that when I look at the squad, right, and John, my thoughts on Matt O'Reilly, and he's done well for us, but the next manager that comes in could see Matt O'Reilly, could upgrade on Matt O'Reilly, and not just play him just for the fact of what he's done in the past. That's what I want to see. I want to see he's been far more ruthless, and I guess Ange was actually doing that already in his second season when the likes of Gigi and Juranovic left, and the players that he brought in. I want to see that continuing, John. I want to see us continually sort of shipping players out, but getting adequate quality in. I just don't want to get back to being a pals act or anything with the next manager that comes in. I've been far too loyal. So I think in that respect with Ange, the way that he was very ruthless with players, I'd like to see the next manager continuing that trend, but ultimately for it to be more a positive thing where it just breeds winners and breeds success. I don't think anybody's going to be complaining if that's the case.
I agree. Right, I think we'll wrap it up here. As I say, lots can change, but this could be outdated in an hour, Stevie, so we'll see what happens and keep everyone in touch. Hamish has got some kind of pre-scheduled videos out later in the week. That, as I say, he's away on holiday. He was always planning to take this holiday. He's happened to take it in the time of a manager search, but he has some pre-made videos ready to go out on the channel. I'll be back in some capacity with someone alongside me next week for a live show if need be, depending on how everything pans out, and we'll stay in touch over the summer. Thanks everyone for joining us live today. It was quite busy, maybe a little bit busier than I was expecting. I'm sure it'll be busy in the comment section as well. Leave your choice of Celtic manager, discuss Brendan Rodgers, let us know everything you're thinking about Celtic at the moment, and have a good time. Thanks very much, Stevie. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you again. Bye-bye, everyone.